I saw that the Modern Mystical made about 25 videos today, so I thought I'd respond to some of it. He's sort of complaining that people aren't understanding him, and he's talking about this I stuff again, you know, that there's no real person in here, there's just brain. But you know, it's sort of, I think he gets lost in how he's explaining it, because it's not like there isn't something unique in each of us. We each have unique programming. So whether we call it I, or, you know, use some other terminology to acknowledge the uniqueness factor, the fact that there is a person, you know, that is the end result of this stuff, and it's not the same person. And I think that just kind of has to be pushed in communicating. And this is the other one of his videos, is just the frustration about how, you know, words come out of one person's mouth and they're heard in another person's ears as something else. And I get a lot of that, and it is frustrating, because we're all people and we're all trying to find some better world and better life. You know, and our basic wants and desires and needs are the same-ish. We really shouldn't have all this trouble trying to figure out how to make the thing work, you know, make this life thing work for not only us individually, but all the other little living things running around. So anyway, but back to the I thing. Yeah, I mean, it is like, okay, Nick used the example of somebody quitting smoking and or drinking, and just made the point that kind of like there was no I that did it, there was no thing that said, yes, I will not do that anymore. But there sort of was. I mean, I could, you know, my brain, me brain, could fall, you know, on the conception, the idea that it's a good thing not to do something. And then it would say, okay, well, how do we not do that? And then it could come up with a plan, a unique plan. It would sit there and say, okay, we're going to engineer now. So it does a little thinking, the wheels turn, blah, 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 and it spits out something like, okay, we're going to say, all right, you have to smoke one less cigarette each day, or some other little mechanism to help the person, the me, to get past this addiction problem. And then it just becomes setting up some sort of thing inside the brain that says, okay, you can't break the rules, because breaking the rules happens all the time, so there has to be some way to stop you from breaking the rules. And so it comes up with some other engineers, some other little mechanism to throw in there. Alright, now, alright, let's say it goes through all that crap, comes up with a plan, it follows the plan, and it quits. Is it legitimate to say, I did it? I mean, well, theoretically, yeah. I mean, my I came up with its plan and it implemented it. So I guess, you know, you can't say it wasn't my programming. You can't say it wasn't my conceptions or my ideas, because my brain did the work of building it, building the strategy. So yeah, I did it. You know, and I think it comes down to that. And so yeah, I mean, all that takes is for the programming to eventually get to some point where it's ground the wheels enough and comes up with the right mechanism, the right imperative to say, yes, it must be done. So I mean, obviously there could be some circumstance where you almost lose your job because of your addiction, and then it makes it even more of an imperative, and you say, well, I must fix this because it's threatening my welfare. So then there's even more of an imperative. It's more of a focused thought, and the brain will be even more disciplined in nagging. The brain will nag itself into submission. But I mean, I don't know, you know, I'm not saying we have to be glued to this I thing. It's just the way the verbiage works out. I mean, whether we say my brain or me brain, or we say my programming, you know, what's the difference? Or whether we just say I mean, as long as we know the I is just programming, you know, that just is a knowledge base, you know, like you have to have the knowledge to be able to articulate the strategy or articulate the understanding that is revealed to you into your consciousness. Your subconscious creates it and drops it right in front of you and said, here's a bit of wisdom. You know, your life will be better if you fix your life. You know, yeah, you have to have that programming. and you don't necessarily make a lot of that stuff. A lot of that stuff comes from the outside. But that was another thing Nick said in his video that I thought was really weird. That somehow there's no way of protecting, like our brains are just, there's no mechanism to prevent the controllers from controlling us, from the others controlling us. Like, say we're going to listen to an anarchist or something, and somehow he's going to convince us because he'll use little mind control techniques or something, and he'll bend us and twist us, and we around his little finger or something. I don't think that's true. I think we are going to end up being a composite of all that we've been exposed to, and if we are lacking some exposure to some idea or way of life or something, we might be deprived of choices because of that deprivation. But I don't think we're inherently immune, vulnerable to being sheeple. I don't think that's an automatic. if you have some notions in your head that protect you against that, some ideas of the fallibility of human beings and their conceptions and the fallibility of popularity, if you know these things are fallible, well, then you're going to have enough skepticism to be, pretty capable of making more reasonable choices than to just follow along. So anyway, you said a lot of things in your videos, Nick, that just, you complain about the grief you get back from people, but some of it deserves grief because it's not very well articulated. We're not all of one mind, and what your mind is a personal thing, personal to you, and what ideas and conceptions it has filtered out of all the crap it's been exposed to in its 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years or 60 or 70 or whatever, is going to be something of merit. It's something of, it is something. It's something unique. You filter out a unique sampling of understanding, and that unique sampling has to be called something. Whether we call it I or me or the programming that I now possess, or however we articulate it, like I said, it doesn't really matter what we call it, as long as we understand the definition of it, and as long as we understand that it is merely a gleaning of a sophisticated response mechanism. They're elegant reflexes. Our brain becomes more elegant in how it reacts to a word. It defines it and puts it in a more complex and intricate context, and it creates more elaborate sentences and paragraphs of description. But it is something. It's not nothing. We're not just all cockroaches. We are individuals. And I just think you kind of discount some of that. But I would concede that in the end, brains brain. That's what they do. They do brainy things. Their objective is to create this personality and create its interactions and all of this stuff. And that part isn't the work part. But there is the brain can create an agenda that does make the brain have to work more. It can feel obligated to do something, and so then it could spend 5 hours doing something tedious and unpleasant just because it created the mental imperative that this was a necessary thing that had to be done. Or you could work if you can't remember something, for example. Well, you could just say, the hell with it. Or you could spend 10 minutes working your brain, which can be unpleasant. It can feel uncomfortable to have to nag your brain to find a reference. So I don't think even there you quite got it. There is extra work. There's work and then there's extra work. But whatever, it doesn't really matter. These aren't important things, but these are trippable ways you're articulating it. So anyway, these are things that people can trip over. If they don't know where you're going in the end. If they don't see the road you're on, they could get confused where you're going. But anyway, enough said. So the communication thing is another big subject, just because that's one we really got to get past, because we piss each other off so easily. We offend each other. I mean, even me and Nick aren't really communicating. Why? Oh, because yeah, so, you know, I dealt with problems in my YouTube world a way that Nick didn't like, and so, you know, we can't talk anymore because I'm a yob and all this bullshit. I mean, look at the bullshit we get caught up in, and it's just so stupid. I mean, all this crap. I mean, you have all these people who can identify a singular problem, and then you'll have, you know, 100 people will agree what the problem is, and then those 100 people have 99 different answers or solutions to the problem. And it's just so frustrating, because we should be able to argue through all the crap. We should be able to beat it all down to its basic elements and put the pieces of the puzzle together and be able to agree what pieces fit in the puzzle and what pieces don't and all of that crap, and somehow we fuck it up. So anyway, out of time.